Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Fida's discussion about the awards. And we're joined here by Lauren Kelso, our winner of our student awards. So we're quite lucky to have her. She's been a busy bee, finishing her graduation and I guess winning loads of other prizes as well. So we'll go into that. But I guess before we have a look at Lauren's work, is just I guess what would be nice from you, Lauren, is two things. One is um, your sort of journey into illustration and how it's gone, I guess, from a student point of view. And then the second thing is how you found your journey applying for the awards and what made you want to do it and pick your work and so on. So, and give us a little introduction.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Lauren and I've just graduated university and I was so delighted to have received a first class honours degree result from Ulster University. So basically I did the foundation year at Ulster University, and that basically allowed me to try loads of different things. I was always creative from when I was younger, and I didn't know what area, maybe fine art, I wasn't sure. And I applied for the foundation and fine art, but I decided to go for foundation because you got direct entry into a degree course. So I then started to take a real interest in the graphic design and illustration course, and I continued and I started that in first year. And then second year happened, and that was kind of around the COVID time. So I was working from home and everything, but it meant I did have a lot more time to just sit and work. You were in the one place really. And then my placement year was quite interesting. So instead of me going out and interning for someone else for my placement year, I was able to go on to this program called Enterprise Placement Year that Ulster University offers to allow students to set up their own business and be supported and guided through that. So that was really interesting for me, and I was able to set up what is now LJK Designs, which is totally separate to this other side of the practice, but I'll explain it in a wee minute. So LJK Designs, then I did that for my placement year and I worked for myself, and I feel like that really gave me a real enthusiasm and like a passion, and just to sort of use my initiative and go for it and not be necessarily scared about just putting myself out there. And then final year happened, and I feel like this was really quite a defining year for me. So I came into final year thinking, okay, I've already set up my business, this is maybe going to help me and I'm maybe going to feel more developed than I maybe would have. And I went in and my work was starting to become very different to what LJK Designs would have been. I was starting to really play around with, like in my sketchbook, so much with like materials, and just have this really experimental, expressive style that just didn't necessarily fit with LJK Designs. So I've always been very experimental. I love variety in terms of like materials and the way I work. And towards the end of final year, after speaking to lots of people, and my tutors were so supportive, I then decided to separate my two sides. So I now have LJK Designs with my website and my Instagram, as it always has been. And then now I've set up this new page called Lauren Kelso Illustrator. And that's where all of this work with the Fida and everything comes in. So in terms of my journey as a student, I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I've really, really developed. I've been at uni for 5 years. So I feel like I've really gained a lot from that. And then the Fida Awards, so that was one of the last projects. University of Ulster loves to, my course allow you to, as illustrators, when you come to the end of your final year, to work on live briefs and live projects. So they encouraged us to choose some projects, and I saw the Fida and I saw it was fashion illustration, and I was like, that really is cool, like I really want to try that. So I have about 4 A3 sketchbooks. I'll try and hold one up here, that are all marked with Fida Awards.
Okay.
So I worked through that, and I started, I think this was really the defining moment for when Lauren Kelso Ulster came, was I just started to really get into it, and there was a sort of sophistication, like pared back kind of approach to it. And I had then, when I came to the end of that project, I had loads of different illustrations then that I really, really loved and felt really raw and really real. And my tutors were so supportive with that. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to enter it because what can I lose? And I never expected to be the overall student winner. But to get that news, I was absolutely delighted. So it has been amazing. Like, it's such a way to end university, and it's really the start of this journey.
Good. I guess when I was a student, we did either D&AD. D&AD was the main one. I did graphics and illustration at Kingston,
Okay.
and the other option was probably the AOI Awards.
hmm
And they were two main things that we did. And a lot of my when I went into tutoring as well, my
hmm
students would do D&AD. I guess half the graphic students probably do D&AD, I guess. I don't know if they participate in D&AD at Ulster, but do they do D&AD?
I'm not sure because
Ah,
we kind of specialize. I'm illustration, so I'm not too sure exactly what.
okay. And
Maybe.
did they do the AOI awards or any of them? Did anyone do it?
Sure. I'm not sure.
Ah,
Just very
oh,
separate. And they actually,
that's interesting to
yeah,
hear.
they have actually separated now onto like totally separate courses. So I think I was one of the last, if not the last year, to have the both and to kind of try the both. So they're
Right.
now very separate. So they do a lot of things. So it's a very good course as well. So I'm not
And
too sure.
and with your tutors looking for external competitions, are they letting you as independent learners to do it yourselves, or did they say, "Oh, this is one worth going to find," or how did you come across us, or it's just
Yeah.
instant?
So basically, after Christmas, we are given then the sort of the encouragement to then complete these live briefs. So our tutors like were really amazing, and they just sit down, like put on our kind of our place where everything's set online, and they just listed loads and loads of different live briefs. And so it was our job to it gives us experience of like responding to an actual live brief set by someone like external that's not them. So it allowed us to just really get into that, what we would do if we've graduated. And so we complete all the work for the live brief, but it's totally our option and our choice to submit the work. But I just decided with everything I was going to submit it because I'd done the work, I was really happy with it, and I thought like, what's to lose? So I took the decision to submit it. But
Ah, okay.
I was very glad I did.
That's interesting to hear. So because I noticed with other universities like Leeds and places like that, they kind of work with our briefs. If
Mm-hmm.
the students can afford to apply, whether they've got the money to apply, and we're trying to work around that at the moment. Maybe make it free for students.
It's
That's our goal.
it sometimes depends as well whether the submission date is still open, because sometimes then we did quite a lot of live briefs. So after we'd finished one, we chose another. So if that date had already gone,
Yeah.
you don't have the option to submit, but you could still work to it as if you were to get the experience.
Yeah. So I guess dates are quite important. I'm going to share my screen so we can just put up your piece of work.
Yep.
Just get this up here. So obviously Lauren Kelso, student winner. And this was the piece of work. And I guess the interesting feedback, we always get feedback that's very different.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was really poignant about this is the deconstruction of proportion,
Mm-hmm.
abstraction, and figurative. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of tapped into a few areas, and the rawness and the sort of innocence of it,
Mm-hmm.
like the words you were using earlier, is some of the things that made it really attractive, which to some people, they feel like it might feel unfinished, or it might, it doesn't feel complete. But I guess
Yeah.
that's what added the value to it. So I guess did you, because you've got your sketchbooks there, did you think about, is this finished enough? Could it been more complete? Does it? How did you feel about the piece, and what did the tutors feel about the piece?
Yeah, so I actually remember completing this. So I was sitting up in the studio space up in Ulster University, and I think I was listening to something in my headphones, and I was just really like enjoying working away. And I actually have the original here. So this is it. This is it with all its like bits of paper kind of like stuck
Yeah.
on. So I basically started off, I love being, as I said earlier, I love being experimental and not knowing what's going to happen. So I remember I did loads of different marks with like pastels, and I took it to the photocopier and I enlarged it to get really good textures. And then I printed out like loads of sheets of these textures and bold colors. So I remember that the whole thoughts behind this piece, which I really love it, and I love the outcome of it. And the whole thought behind it was, as I was responding to the fame and fortune brief, was what does fame look like today? So I did loads of thinking about this, and I researched it, and I did loads of different illustrations in my sketchbook to try and really fathom what that meant. And I was thinking, well, I suppose, and I read a few articles, everyone can have the option now of being famous. That is what fame looks like today, in a way. Everyone has their phones, everyone can put out a certain image and can become famous in that way. So I was looking and I was thinking, well, an influencer, and I remember that was in the brief as well. And I'm really interested in that whole aspect as well. So I then started to look, okay, what's like a common influencer pose? What do you often see? And then this sort of stance of someone kneeling down with their boots and like showing off their fashion, their blazer, just was really interesting. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start. And I started just collaging, and I love just going with the flow. And I think I'm really out of that mindset now of whether it's finished or not. I think that university and just experimenting in my sketchbook really helped me break that, because I think that is something that can impact people when they're like at school and everything has to be more finished, but we're really encouraged to just not worry about that. So I started putting it down just where it felt right. And I was aware that obviously you can see the top of the shoulder, but there's no arm. And I remember thinking to myself, if I put that on, I think that's going to ruin it. And I feel like I was just like, you know what, I really like that. There's a real attitude with it. And even the wee ink splot on the boot there, like I was like, I'm keeping that, and I'm keeping everything just raw, because as you say, that is, I think, what's really really effective with it is just the rawness and the ink, and how it's not even off the corners, it's not finished with the brush, it's just left. And I think that's part of it. So in terms of the chairs, I remember I'd done loads of illustrations, and I'd really found I found it, I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I find that the pieces were coming out really sophisticated and had like an edge to them. And I showed them, and I remember they're so lovely, and they literally were starting to go through, and they're like, wow, look at that, look at that. And they really, really loved the stuff that I'd done, and it was so nice. And that was one of the pieces. So I think something just clicked. I think that's what it was, because there were like about the second or third sketchbook, there's just so many things that I felt just worked. And I think this is the start of basically where Lauren Kelso Illustrator came into play, because I think it's really when I just found my feet completely and was like, you know what, I love work like this. So it's really meaningful.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, there's this sort of nod to Matisse and people like that with the
Yeah.
sort of collage blue, and
Mm-hmm.
Yves Klein and all these sorts of people who've worked with the color blue
Yeah.
and collaged it. And I think they're kind of what you get from going to university and building up a sort of a context of all these different variables that feed what you do,
Yeah.
and gives you the sort of courage. It's courage, like to put a piece in. That's sort of what we look for. We don't look for the perfections. We look for courage.
Yeah.
We look for risque. We, you know, the all these elements, and when we get feedback from industry and people, that's what they kind of want, is something a little bit more avant-garde,
Mm-hmm.
something. And really and truly, the students tend to battle quite hard against the professionals, or the professionals that haven't necessarily gone through academic processes. It's
Mm-hmm.
those who are really risky and push the boundaries of what they're doing. So when I saw this, you know, you've got all of the classics, the yellows, the blues, the blacks, the whites, you know, Miro, all of these famous artists who've used these really pulled back colors, stripped back. And then the collage adds that sort of tactility to it, which brings it back into, I guess, a fashion art, fashion illustration context. Because we're trying to work out what is fashion illustration, what is the
Mm-hmm.
role of fashion illustration today, rather than fashion illustrators just had the role of drawing designs for fashion designers,
Yeah.
where I think a fashion illustrator is a more like an artist and an illustrator glued together who's making a comment on today. And
Yeah.
that, I think, like you said, there is looking at influencers and looking at people. Richard Hamilton did a really famous collection of pieces about women in the crouch position. So you know, analyzing poses that people did in fashion magazines, because he did a lot of art pieces about this crouching position, and you know, he went on to do lots of other works. So I think you've analyzing the way people sit and the meth. You know, imagine if Google was doing analytics or AI on what is the most used post by influencers to inform you to
Yeah.
what pose you should do to gain more likes. Is
Yeah.
where blue is the most sold artworks within Christie's, the color blue. So all these simple little things, they're like tricks or knowledge that you can have,
Yeah.
kind of attracts the eyes of the viewer.
Yeah.
But no, I thought this was a fascinating piece, and you did a great job, and you know, and looking at what you do as well afterwards, like there's an aftermath period of me then hunting down who are all these characters, and
Yeah.
who's won this and who's won that, and what do they do. And it's nice to see that you're kind of on a motion going up. You've had obviously a very academic experience now of like 5 years, and then I really like that idea of that sort of entrepreneurial part of your practice which they're pushing. And it's not one little bit of advice is, even though you've separated them, if they can blend back in together again, is the real eureka moment. Is because too many people, what they do is they separate their paying practice from what they love doing, and they feel like we can't put them together because they'll destroy each other.
Yeah.
I don't feel free doing my art because no one wants it. But if you can infuse the two, that is when you hit magic, where someone has the courage to go, no, that is what we love. And your job is to constantly educate the art directors, art viewers, of no, being realistic and being like this isn't always the right methodology. But we know we need to train and educate the viewer, because lots of people will look at your work and you know, they'll say, oh well, that's unfinished and that's old scrappy bits of paper and that's that, but they've not got the educated knowledge of like you have. And it will be a battle for you forever. So be prepared to fight your corner. I guess in your crits at university, your tutors should have rattled your cage plenty to make you robust enough. You sound pretty robust anyway. So what's your plans now? You finished, university's done. Apart from a rest, what's
Yeah. The plans, well, there's nothing really 100% set in stone, which is exciting. And as I say, the experience last year of having that year working for myself, it doesn't feel as scary now, because I'm like, yeah, like I've done this before. So that was really, really helpful to have that. And the tutors on that course were so supportive and amazing. And basically the awards, so I won a couple of awards on my opening night of my degree show, and one of those was the Ulster Orchestra Award. So basically my illustrations were chosen to be put onto merchandise for the Ulster Orchestra, things like tote bags, come September. So I'll be working on that. Design's already done, it's just all the logistics and everything for that. And then I also won an award by John Rush Digital, the Digital Award. They're a printing company in Belfast who do a lot of G-clay prints, and actually printed my G-clay for the end of year show. And I won one of the digital awards with them, and that includes like sort of support and like almost mentoring aspect of that, and some printing credit then to get more prints. But I've started selling G-clay prints of this piece. So this piece is available A3, and then I have some other entries that are very similar to this piece available, A4, A3, and some A5s of different work as well for Lauren Kelso Illustrator that I had at the shop of our degree show. So those are still available, and they're all in G-Clay archival. 310 grand, like, very it was really great to put my work out there for the end of your show. We had our shop area, and to get that support, because obviously this is the first time I've been selling work from Lauren Kelso Illustrator. But I want to just keep developing and seek out opportunities and apply for different things. Like, that's the one thing, like, I think this obviously would never happen if I had decided not to apply. And so I'm really kind of a big advocate for just like putting in your work, because you never know what's going to happen. And then in terms of LJK Designs, I've just come out with new t-shirt designs and new caps. So they'll be launching in a couple of weeks' time. And that's a lot more like illustration for different products and of illustration prints. So it's a lot more like just for, like, I would go to markets with that work, and people would recognize the different places that I've illustrated. And I do like greeting cards and everything, and I have a website for that. So yeah, they're very different, and I love that. As I say, I love being experimental. So I think the plan is just to grow both those sides and go forward with that. And I also did like a workshop in a school there last week, and that really went well. And I was encouraging the kids to just use like cocktail stick and a wee sponge and a pot of ink, what we would have done at uni, to do workshops and loosen up. And they were getting stuck into that, and seeing all of their individual styles as well. So that definitely could be something for the future. But at the minute, I'm just enjoying the rest and keeping things ticking over, and then going to grow the two sides. But
Yeah.
in terms of this piece here, when you said about all the different influences, one of the big influences was Rosie McGuinness. And then I saw that she was one of the judges, and that was very surreal, because I love her work, and she was a big influence. I did look at a whole range and researched heavily, but yeah, she was one of the people that I saw. Even on her Instagram, everything's just so pared back, and it's just like, it just has that real raw kind of braveness, and it just sits. And that's something that I've really taken into my own practice as well. So yeah,
Good.
it's
Good. It sounds all positive, and it's all good news. And I guess leaving university is quite a tough challenge, and you're kind of stepping out into the real world. And I guess for me, when I graduated, and then you go in, and it's sometimes nice to go and see how big companies work and use their facilities and experiment with their time. I always find that's great. But I know in the contemporary world, like my son and my kids, they're like, I don't need to work for anybody. I'm working for myself. And they're setting up shops, and they're much more entrepreneurial. The internet's there, so it means you can have a Shopify site or something. Or my son doesn't pay for any of them things. He uses anything that's free, Equid, all this stuff I didn't know about. And it's just fascinating how young people think. A budget of zero, and they're really smart and creative and experimental. And I think that's great. Listening to you now is sort of a great way forward, because sometimes people can be stuck in a mud of, oh well, I'm not doing this, and you're really, I guess that's the adventurous experience. So have your quick break, as I'd say.
Yes, definitely.
My philosophy is get the break done, and then have plans.
Yeah.
Have plans as quick as possible, because the student influx is massive. And everybody's leaving at the same time, all looking for jobs and opportunities and things like that. But the good thing is you're quite busy with your little awards. Like anybody, is what's next. Get it connected up, and have them dots all laid out, and say, okay, here's 3 months, here's 6 months, and then from that, opportunities will arise and stuff like that. So anyway, Lauren, that was it was great speaking to you. And it's and hopefully, because you're now part of the membership, and we do Slack group, and there'll be lots of sort of peer discussion. There's lots of academics on there from the Royal College, from the RC, from all these different places. So you'll see voices on there that talk a lot about being paid as a live events artist, which is quite sort of a major income now for illustrators. And also projects. We have lots of projects coming up. We've got one in France with Chappelle. So join in when you can. Join the conversation. I think we've got a talk next week with Tony Green, who's a quite known, versed illustrator. It's funny to get lots of the illustrators like Rosie to speak. A lot of illustrators are quite scared. They don't talk. So it's hard to get many illustrators because they're actually quite quiet people. They like to be in the background and they like to be this sort of underground artist. So if we get some people to talk, it's complex. I'd love to have all of our judges. Some are French that couldn't, we'd have translation issues, but we're trying to work our way around these things. But anyway, so thanks. We managed to capture each other because I know you were busy and I was busy, but we got to each other in the end, and well done. And I'm looking forward to seeing this journey now because we had Harry who won the last one, and now he's working for Vivienne Westwood. So
I know, it's great. No, I'm really thankful for all the Slack group and everything. I'm in that, so you'll be seeing my name pop up a lot.
Definitely. Excellent. Thank you, Lauren, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Bye-bye.